And now I would like to invite Seetal Solanki to the stage. Seetal, who speaks multiple languages across industry, academia, design, fashion, music, film, architecture, food production, science, and streets. Seetal, who is an author of a book, Why Materials Matter, Responsible Design for a Better World. Seetal, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining me this morning. I know it's an early start. I am going to take you on a journey to discover what you're made of, and that is through a materials lens, which has been a really big part of my personal journey, which I will share with you as well so you understand a context which feels quite personal, I would say. And to take you on that journey, I will begin with this. So the reason why I've begun my practice called Matter is to find a way of relating to the material world which feels more, I guess, relatable and approachable and friendly, because when we think about the world, everything is made from something. So I want people to find a relationship with materials that feels more human, rather than the take, make, waste dialogue that we're seeing a lot of. So my practice was built on the building of more respectful and caring relationships to the material world, and this quote exemplifies a lot of what and why I do what I do. I'm from a design background, so the way that I've approached materials is through fashion, design, architecture, and lots of other different fields, which you'll see more of. Oh, I don't know why that's fallen off the screen, but anyway. The way that materials are categorized tend to be through a typological approach, and that, for some reason, allows for silos and materials to be boxed into places where you're not really understanding the many possibilities that materials possess. So we have glass, metal, plastic, textiles, and each and every single one of these materials has so much versatility that we understand if we're framing it in a typological format or categorization, we're not seeing the various ways in which each and every single material can be approached. And I'll show you an example of that shortly. But the way that I've even described what I do as a translator of materials is very indicative of this. So I don't want to feel like I'm a designer that only knows how to translate material through fashion. I do it across many different worlds, and you'll see more of that shortly, which is this. So I work in all these sectors and many other sectors, and the way that I approach materials is by understanding that I have to speak many different languages. So whether it's the science language or a policy language or an education one, a more academic one, or a design one. Now, each and every one of these sectors speaks very differently about materials and at very different scales. So to understand how to apply these materials into these spaces, it means I have to understand a whole different vernacular, which is a really exciting thing for me, and also it allows the materials to be implemented in ways that they perhaps weren't perceived before. So it's an exercise in translating materials, but also understanding the many different languages involved in integrating into these worlds. Because the material is the main conduit between all of these worlds, and that's what I want to bridge more of. So it's expanding the relationships through materials. And as Bartek said, I've written a book called Why Materials Matter, which really takes you on a journey of expanding your perception of what a material is. So you'll see in here blood as a material, air as a material, digital materials, and many other more, I would say, conventional materials, but they would be expressed in very unique and unfamiliar ways. And what's quite exciting about this is that I launched it in 2018, and it's still going strong, which is, yeah, I guess people are ready to hear about it. And what I did is commission different people that I featured in the book, whether it was a scientist, an engineer, an architect, or fashion designer, or product designer, to make a bookend that supported the materials that were featured in the book. So each of them support each other. So the material supports the book, and the book supports the material. So it's a very symbiotic relationship that existed. I'm writing another book right now, which it's a very painful exercise. I don't know if anyone else has written a book, but why I'm doing it again, I have no idea. But it's will be worth it at some point. And this one is about an atlas of materials, which I'm going to describe a bit more of right now. So I'm going to take you on a journey through migration. And it's been a really big part of my personal journey because this is my ancestry. So I was born in the UK, my parents were born in Kenya, my grandfather in Uganda, the rest of my grandparents in India, and then there's some Persian in me somewhere, and I don't know where from. But this has caused me many, many identity crises, but also has shaped the world that I live in. And I have been able to navigate this through materials. And materials have really allowed me to find a sense of place and also an identity within myself that feels true. And I have been able to apply that kind of integration and interconnectedness and intercultures and interlocals, all the inters, through my practice and through myself. So as much as it's been a discovering of what we're made of as a world through materiality, it's also been a journey of discovering what I'm personally made of. And the Silk Road has been a journey which has obviously given a sense of place and migration route through my own ancestry and many others, obviously. And I'm taking that as a kind of premise towards how people have migrated with materials has been very synonymous with one another. And what I mean by that is materials were used as a trading tool across different lands, and which is why we see materials perhaps that aren't native in different lands across the world. And because it's been used as a trading tool, we've now got people who have migrated across these lands with the materials because they've had to skill themselves in order for them to survive. And that's been my own, well, my grandfather, for example, he trained himself up to become an engineer on the railways. And he did that in Uganda. And then he transferred those skills of metalworking and welding and engineering into the UK. So it meant that he could transfer what was a material-led skill into another country, which meant that we could have a different life, which was meant to be better. And this project is a project that I have been doing on an ongoing basis called the Material Atlas. And so this is a whole new categorization of placing materials on the different lands that exist. So I've worked with the British Council on this and 10 different countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And how I've categorized this is through place. Native materials, local materials, migrant materials, and then cosmic. So the way that I've given, it's been co-created, and the way that I've translated it is through sound, imagery, video, text, and symbology. And the way that we've even understood it as an alphabet of materials is through its own symbolic language. So I'm trying to get more of a nuanced and culturally nuanced approach in the way that we understand the material world. So it feels like it's not only coming from a Western lens, and it's, I mean, this artist and architect called Maxwell, based in Zimbabwe, he presented a song, and that's what he showed in terms of his material language. And that, for me, blew me away. And I'm now expanding so much more around what materials are, because it's not just something that feels very aesthetically pleasing or tangible. It's also about the feeling. So, and a practice and a ritual and scent and all sorts of things, movement even. So the embodied intelligence around the materials are something that's a really big part of this landscape too. And at the end of it all, of what I'm really excited about is traveling across the world with this. So it becomes something that's public facing and that you can contribute to as well. So there's more expansion of it and a way that other people can translate their worlds and their materiality through their landscapes within this. So I'm very excited about that. And the next region we're reaching with this one is in Southeast Asia. And the aim of this is to understand how these practices of making with these materials are translatable across different worlds and lands. And maybe there's a way that we learn from each other. So it's a real large database of knowledge that I'm wanting to share with others. And then there's a guide of how you can do that yourself. Well, that's the website. And I wanted to kind of express the larger context of materials. Now, we have 160,000 unique materials in the world that are being manufactured. That's a huge amount. When we think about making new, it's not just making new with new materials, but I think it's also making new with what already exists. And because I don't really know what we're doing with 160,000 unique materials just now. But maybe there's other ways of doing that. And so I wanted to share an example of what I mean by this. And these are eggs, and as you all know. And eggs, for me, cooking and materials are the same. You understand where the ingredient comes from, and then you know how to process it. And that comes through many different ways, whether it's poaching, frying, baking, scrambling. Each and every process allows for a completely different application, texture, quality. And the way that I've kind of approached this idea as well as process is by working with this hotel out in Bali called Potato Head at Desa. And what we did was map the whole landscape of the island of Bali through its materials. Again, native, local, migrant, cosmic. And we only wanted to understand what was available, what exists, and also with the craftspeople that are living on the island. And we built a whole hotel by doing that. And these are the different areas. So there's 170 rooms. There's suites, and then there's public spaces and restaurants, and yeah, plenty of things to design into. And one thing I will also say, politically, it's a very challenging place because recycling doesn't really exist on the island. And with that in mind, we basically created a recycling center for plastic. And Bali in Indonesia, as you probably know, is one of the Jayas. So there's so much washed up plastic waste that ends up on the island. So we made many different things, including this roofing structure. And that was partially done by creating an innovation lab within this hotel so that we could actually process all the plastic waste with the craftspeople and also teach others how to do it themselves. So it's a training program as well that was created as much as the interiors. And we worked with OMA and built the whole interiors with them. And these examples are quite exciting for me, especially the one on the right. So we worked with a designer called Max Lamb, who's also based in the UK, and he came over and we paired him up with a craftsperson on the island who worked with bamboo. And this chair on the right-hand side is made with bamboo purely. There's no other kind of fixtures or fittings made with other materials, which is what would normally be the case. But for me, the lamp is what's most exciting because the lamp shade is made from this very ancient material called ijuk. And it's the thatching that's part of Balinese temple roofs, which is a very sacred material. And we discovered, they're palm fronds, so they just fall off the tree naturally. And what's exciting about it is naturally fire retardant. So as a material, it's highly, highly intelligent. And for me, material intelligence is a really big part of the misunderstanding of materials because we think for a material to be intelligent, we need to apply digital technology for it to feel like it exists in that world. But this is some telling other stories, which I'm really fond of sharing. And then the volcanic stone is what the base is. And these are made from cotton farmers, palm weavers, and even the volcanic sand was integrated into some of these products, which you'll see on the left-hand side. This is rattan, and this is a very, very tough material to work with, and a unique way to approach it is by doing this. And this was done with Faye Toogood and rattan makers from Jakarta. What I'll do actually, oh, there we go. So these are just a few films that I'd show you just to show you the expansiveness of what this looks like. And I think the communication is a really big part of it as well. And that's for other people to kind of connect to in a way that feels exciting and desirable. And then this is the final project. Now, to kind of give some final thoughts, materials help you understand your sense of place, and the way that we've approached it is through social, environmental, political, and economical, and this project is very representative of the way that materials tackle some of these issues, even if it's from a grassroots level. and the way that materials have to travel into those spaces for it to become a reality. It's been through ancient practices and understanding those and bringing it into the present, but understanding how the future can hold that as well. And for me, that's a really exciting place to be. So thank you very much.